This episode is brought to you by Amazon. Sometimes the most painful part of getting sick is the getting better part. Waiting on hold for an appointment, sitting in crowded waiting rooms, standing in line at the pharmacy, that's painful. Amazon One Medical and Amazon Pharmacy remove those painful parts of getting better with things like 24/7 virtual visits and prescriptions delivered to your door. Thanks to Amazon Pharmacy and Amazon One Medical, healthcare just got less painful.
Welcome back to the Epic Universal Podcast with Eric Hersey. I'm entertainment writer Jim Hill, and this is the podcast where we cover the latest Universal news, rumors, and history. And again, as I just mentioned, I'm joined by my able-bodied podcast host, Eric Hersey. And we are, this is the show that goes live on January 3rd. So happy New Year. Is that what
Happy
we're
New
saying?
Year, Jim. Yes,
Okay.
we've been doing this show for almost a year now.
That's right.
Can
That's
you
right.
believe that?
Well, again, I'm old. I can believe anything at this point. But by the way, New Year, and we have a new sponsor. In fact, Eric and I are very excited to announce a brand new partnership with Be Our Guest Vacations. And Be Our Guest Vacations is a platinum level earmarked travel agency with concierge level services to make your next trip to Universal epic. Oh, I love what you did there, Eric. All right. Anyway, their team of expert agents plan vacations across the globe, from Universal Orlando, Hollywood, likewise the Disney parks, cruises and adventures. And the team at Be Our Guest Vacations will help you have the best possible experience without the stress. So reach out to the team at beourguestvacations.com today, and be sure to let them know that it was the Epic Universal Podcast that sent you over there.
Yeah, Jim, I'm pretty excited. We've partnered with a travel agency because, as you know, I'm still a bit new to this Universal world, right? And talking with a travel agency is literally game-changing. So last year we went to Disneyland and Universal for the first time.
Mhm.
And as much as I would like to research, I just don't have the time as much anymore. So for me, it was a matter of I couldn't get the tips and the hacks that I did once upon a time when I was first jumping into the theme park world. So leaning on experts like the team at Be Our Guest Vacations, truthfully will save you time, money, stress. So I can't wait to kind of pick their brains about some of the stuff that's going to be coming up for some of the upcoming trips this year.
But at the same time, what's kind of interesting is that, well, for example, we've talked on the show about you and Lauren's most recent trip with the Hersey family down to Universal and your stay at the Endless Summer Resort. And I have to tell you, I was literally at I was at brunch with friends who are, they have their kids and they're planning a trip to Orlando. And of course, these kids are constantly gaming. And so they were talking about, well, we feel like we need to do the big Disney World trip. And it's just sort of like, well, first of all, no, if they game, you should be going to Universal, especially with Epic Universe opening this May. And then they mentioned that it looks like there were 6 of them going. And I immediately told the story about you, Lauren, and the kids, and Lauren's mom, staying at Endless Summer, and how much you guys had enjoyed staying there in the rooms there. So, mind you, I'm not as good as the folks at Be Our Guest Vacations, but I feel like they're going to book that trip, and it's like, hey, where's my commission? So
that's it. No, I think that, but it's so important.
Mm-hmm.
Truthfully, to have somebody that's been there, done that, and we're kind of learning as we go. But I mean, we go down a couple times a year, so we have an excuse to possibly make a goof up. But most people, this is a once in a lifetime trip, and at the end of the day, having somebody say, "Hey, you need this many days at Disney, this many days at Universal, you should stay here," so forth. Mm-hmm. So happy to have some people on our team to basically ask some good questions to and get good answers and avoid some of those mishaps.
There we go. And we thank Be Our Guest Vacations for sponsoring this show. So, all right. So what's up for this week? What do we got for our first show of 2025?
Jim, I think you guys do a really good job over on the Disney Dish when people send you surveys. And we were lucky enough to get a survey sent to us about Universal. Ooh. So I think we play the little game where I'll play the position of Len and you be Jim Hill, and I'll give you some of these survey questions and let's see if they mean anything. Okay. Right? So this survey came from a listener who had a trip maybe early December around that time. But I think it's the new year. I still think we need to talk about Wicked. So there was a series of Wicked questions that came. And so, Jim, the first question that came through was, how did the Wicked themed content at Universal Orlando Resort impact your interest in seeing the film, if at all? Would you say it made you? And then they have the much more interested, somewhat, no, somewhat less, and then much more interested. So that's the first question. And mind you, down at Universal at this time, they had they just transferred the shop at the front of the Universal Orlando to be the Wicked theme that had all the props, right? And there was like a little food cart, and there was Voodoo Donuts, I think, had specialty, and then the Starbucks had the specialty drink. So that's kind of what they're referring to.
Okay.
So the next question, did you visit any of those? And also Twosome had some specialty milkshakes. So wanted to kind of know which ones you experienced. And then the last question in this 3-part series, which of the following describes your interest in seeing the Wicked film? Which I thought was interesting because that came after the other ones. And it was, I've already seen it. I plan on to watch in the theaters, and I plan on watch it once it's available on home and streaming platforms. And I'm not planning to watch. So Wicked questions make sense, but I know the rumors and the theories is, hey, we're going to probably get Wicked in a theme park. What do you think these questions are? What are they trying to get out of this?
Well, obviously, Universal is thrilled with the response Wicked has gotten so far. In fact, it's worth noting that since we recorded our last show, we now know the title of Wicked Part 2. It's actually Wicked for Good, which, again, is the big song for Elphaba and Galinda in the second act of the Broadway musical. Everything I'm hearing from friends at Universal is that this went so much better than anybody had ever anticipated. By the way, this is a story we will be sharing on the next edition of Looking at Lucasfilm. But did you see the story that John Chu, the director of Wicked, shared about George Lucas?
Oh, I heard it, but refresh.
Okay, well, basically, George Lucas went to go see Wicked at his local Cineplex at the mall. And so John Chu is at home and his phone lights up and it's George Lucas. And he picks up the phone and is like, hello? And George was like, I just want to say, I saw your movie and I know how hard this must have been to do with all of those effects and all of that music and all of that dancing and all of those actors. And you did such a wonderful job. I just wanted, he was still at the mall. And he called John Chu. And I just thought, that is such a class act. That's such a sweet thing to do, especially when you're a filmmaker who, by the way, is still in the middle of sorting out part 2. So yeah, Universal is flat out thrilled with how things have gone for Wicked, but the notion is, okay, we still have part 2 to do, and are there other things that we could be doing?
That's kind of what I was thinking, Jim, is this is a great question. They have 12 months to put other things that are probably temporary, because I don't think these questions are leaning towards, hey, should we get a new land? I think this is, hey, what are things that people were just casual fans who didn't even see the movie yet, but walked in and enjoyed? So could they make another temporary space? There we go. Could they add more carts? How could there be a temporary show maybe? Or how much should they invest? Along with the question of, like, if they calculate these questions and found out that it made people want to see the movie more, or it made them bigger fans, that could gauge on, hey, I wasn't a fan at all. I ended up seeing this thing. Maybe I wanted to see it, or so forth. So I think those are their questions, and that makes a ton of sense.
No, you're not wrong, though. The part of this, I don't know if you've seen any of the imagery from Universal Singapore of what they're doing for Wicked. They have this amazing moment in the park that they basically built a full-size gate for the Emerald City, and every so often these 2 team members dressed as Elphaba and Galinda in the signature outfits come out and just stand there and pose. And the people in Singapore are losing their minds.
I think we would have lost our minds here too. When we were down there, we were hoping to get one of the surprise appearances. We didn't, but Lauren and my daughter and her mom, for that matter, are obsessed with this darn movie right now. So Christmas was very green and pink. It was very so. All right, we'll move over to the next series of questions. So here's the one that I thought was interesting. Please think about the last vacation that you took to Universal Park. Did you change any of the following in order to save money on that vacation? So this is specific questions. That was it change accommodations, stayed at a less expensive or less expensive room type, change the dates, change the destination, change your trip duration, change your dining habits, different activities, or transportation. So it asked very specifically asking about essentially, did you have it planned and did you have to change it because financially? And then the next question was, which was kind of odd, is some have more flexibility when they travel, while others are less flexible due to work and family obligations. Which of the following statements describes your flexibility in your household? And it's a matter of option of working remotely. It's a matter of your work schedule gives you flexibility, and school-aged children set for flexibility. So paired together, I'm wondering, are they like teasing like off season like trips, or are they teasing to the point where they can maybe make more flexibility for like working parents that might have like options to remote work while down there or promote or benefit there? What do you take from those questions? What are they trying to gather?
I'm not. I have to admit, I'm kind of intrigued by these. And what's interesting is when you and I go down to Orlando, we often do work remotely. In fact, I'm schlepping podcast equipment with me, which again, I'm always amazed that I don't break it. But yeah, that sort of leaning into the fact that in this world full of gig economies and that sort of thing, even when people go on vacation, they may have to work remotely. And how could we, in fact, tailor the universal vacation experience to take into account this market segment? Because that's the thing. When you run a giant resort, destination resort like this, and let's face it, we are just weeks out now from Stella Nova opening.
Yeah.
And that's more hotel rooms that you have in your inventory. And never mind about the Helios opening with the park, or for that matter, the Terranova. But yeah, that just the notion of, okay, could that be the deciding factor in somebody committing to a vacation at Universal? The notion of, oh, well, while you're down here, you have to work. It's like, well, we just so happen to have facilities here that would help make that much easier. So
right. Well, did I tell you, Jim, that we were down and we went to the DVC Lounge at Epcot? Right. And we go there typically once a trip just to kind of go explore the old area. And this time around, we saw that they took like some of the back seating out of the far corner and they put these like booths up, almost these high table tops that all had cords, and you almost look like it was made for shared workspacing, like to the point where it was made so that way you could put your laptop and work. And and as I was walking by, I was talking to the cast members. Oh, that's new, right? And he's like, yeah, you'd be surprised how many people are working from the DVC Lounge daily. They actually check in and they go up there for a couple hours and they work, which is crazy, but yet, hey, I mean, if I had to choose where I wanted to work from, I think Epcot in the old Imagination ImageWorks or whatever wouldn't be a bad spot.
No. But I mean, face it, it's not the ideal Disney World vacation experience. But on the other hand, if forgive me for being sexist here, but if the wife and kids are out enjoying it, by the way, it's just as likely that mom is the one who has to sit in the Imagination Pavilion and work. So dad is out taking the kids around the park. Just the fact that this is now an option or a necessary thing, that both a Universal and a Disney are taking this in consideration and creating spaces. That's interesting.
Think about it. The Helios, which is right off of the Epic Universe. Imagine if you said, all right, you guys work, but you can still kind of look out and see where your kids are, right? It's just very interesting. So those were some good questions that I thought would be interesting to talk about. And the last one was very, very odd. I've never seen this on any type of survey before, but it would say, we'd like to hear more from our guests who may have unique experiences to body size, dimensions, or disabilities.
Mm-hmm.
Did any of the following apply? And they go through pretty much any type of disability that you could possibly have, kind of choosing,
Mm-hmm.
and it's from a matter of hearing disability, PTSD, vision, oxygen tank, service animal.
Mm-hmm.
And then it asked, the next question was, did any of your party travel with an ECV or wheelchair?
Mm-hmm.
Those questions, what do you think they're gathering is, because I know over the years of hearing, just generally, there's a lot of new technology rides and so forth that are kind of causing different individuals not to be able to ride. Do you think this is a question leading towards, should we take something offline, or we're trying to create something and we need to know how many people it's going to affect? I know Tron was a big issue where people could not use the Tron ride.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've also heard whether it be Velocicoaster, whether your height even was affecting. Have you seen these questions prior?
We are in this space now. And again, circling back to when you have so many hotel rooms and you need to service as many market segments as possible to make sure you fill those hotel rooms and all of that. The fact that, again, you have individuals. I mean, Universal has dealt with, for example, the issues with Hagrid's Magical Creatures coaster, that certain guests of certain sizes were not able to ride that attraction. And there were a number of people who, I think the phrase fat shaming was thrown around, that sort of thing. It's interesting that Universal is trying to be inclusive here and sort of take temperature in the room, especially at a time when, face it, Disney just last year, one of the more controversial things that Disney did was they updated their guest access pass system. Yeah. And a lot of people suddenly, after years of no questions asked about, like, I need a guest access pass, well, we're going to need a note from a doctor. We're going to need, and in fact, the notion that Disney took it out of the hands of the cast members on the front line and created this opportunity with a third-party company to make the decision there. Yeah, I mean, it just tells you a lot about where we are now as a society, coupled with the fact that these giant theme parks that are owned by immense media corporations that are just, we need to be making every possible dollar, especially at a time when it's kind of ironic that here's a Universal getting ready to open Epic Universe in Florida, and the park, the Universal Kids Park in Texas, and the thing in Vegas. So they're spending billions in and of themselves, but at the same time, they're also looking over their shoulder at a Disney that announced that they're going to be spending $60 billion on their parks. It's sort of like, all right, what are we going to do to protect our market share? And does that mean being a bit more sensitive to folks who face physical challenges in the park?
Right. I think of some things like just the wheelchair at ECV question. I mean, one thing that I noticed every time I used to do the buses at Disney is that, one ECV, you can only get one or two on a bus. And now the buses are going to be very prominent to get people from Epic, back and forth. So I'm wondering if they're even looking at things like that. Do they need to enhance their buses to be able to fit more or have more? So it'd be very interesting.
I don't know. Totally. You're not wrong, especially given that is going to be the way a lot of people are getting around the Universal campus starting in May.
Right.
So we'll see.
Yeah. Well, hey, if you guys have surveys out there, we'd love to look at them. Send them over to us. Eric at Eric Hersey or Jim at jimhillmedia.com. Good way to get surveys.
All right. So now I guess that wraps up the news for this week. So now, given that it's the start of a new year, do we want to take a look back at what happened in 2024 with Universal?
I'd love to, Jim. I say we take a break, we come back, we look at what happened in 24, and maybe we'll make some predictions for 25. You never know.
That works. Okay. And we'll be back in a moment.
The rhythm of the holidays is in the air at Cartier. Ring in the winter season with the enchanting universe of the Maison's creations that set the tempo for precious memories and momentous occasions. Extraordinary jewelry, watches, accessories, objects, and more hit all the right notes with a touch of magic. Shimmering with a symphony of style, these gifts shine in perfect harmony. Visit Cartier.com to shop holiday gifts.
What is this place?
Welcome to Cloud 9.
How exactly did I get here?
You're a Toyota Crown driver, and only Crown drivers ever reach this level of pure bliss.
The captivating Toyota Crown family. Toyota, let's go places.
And we're back. So, Eric, you went back through all of 2024 and pulled a fascinating pile of stories here. So, why don't you take us through what you found and what you found fascinating about this past year with Universal?
Sure. Well, let me just premise it here. Obviously, we started last year. I think our first show was on the 24th. So this is my first full year actually being a Universal fan, which is kind of fun and fascinating in its own right, especially the first, I guess, half of the year was 100% me just learning from you. It would have been 101 if there was ever anything where I'm just learning. So a lot of these stories that came out when I first heard them, we had a whole segment, news or not even knowing. And now it's a matter of like, oh, I can actually appreciate a lot of this. So this is pretty fascinating in its own right. So, the first, tell me, the biggest story has to be Epic Universe, the opening date, right? Announced, and just Epic Universe and how they've been rolling that out through the whole year. That has to be the story of 2024, right?
Absolutely. And I by the way, I once again want to give credit to friend of the show, BioReconstruct, who has, again, we have so much of an in-depth understanding of how far along things are. And for example, just in the past a couple of weeks or so, the after hours lighting tests on the racing coaster, or the flame effect in the Dark Universe area with the windmill, or the lightning effect on Castle Frankenstein. Again, that's I don't know how this man does it. And by the way, I also want to issue a personal thank you. BioReconstruct reached out, I want to say a week to 10 days ago, because we did our show about Earl the Squirrel. And I mentioned that, dang, the book got sold out. And I really wanted to find out whether or not the official book echoed the story that the team members sent. And Bio reached out and said, hey, do you want a copy of the book? But of course it's the holidays and I get distracted and I don't respond. And he bought the copy of the book. I didn't respond. He took it back, returned it. And then I reached out and said, oh, cool. Yes. So he made a second trip into the park for me and got me another copy of this book. So very much looking forward to checking this
awesome.
out. It was, again, he's a great guy.
Yeah.
And not just a talented pilot, but a genuinely nice human being.
I think if we gave an MVP award for the year 2024 when it comes to Epic Universe, BioReconstruct, getting I think the latest flyover, which is in 4K, to see the whole park. So it's just amazing. And I think this has to be one of the first times, like, opening a theme park that we've seen it chronicled. Before that, it was like, all right, you'll have Universal put out one video, and just kind of highlight stuff, and then it's open, and then you see it yourself. But this has been really fascinating to see it step by step throughout the years.
Absolutely.
And I do think that one of the fun things that I've noticed that this year is that they did a very good job getting you hyped about each individual land. With skilled videos, just enough behind the scenes, just enough intrigue, and they highlighted. So from a marketing perspective, really appreciated that, and it's been a slow trickle throughout the year. I think the date was first announced, and they did that wonderful video that was like an 8-minute video, and then slowly but surely they came across each one. So I think that's the big story.
No, they have definitely done a masterful job of keeping folks engaged. And in fact, we were just talking on last week's episode about, for example, what they did with the broadcast, the NFL broadcast,
right,
which, by the way, was from the NBC Sports Grill there, right there in City Walk, and how they managed to turn that into a promo for Epic Universe. So it's just like they are just firing on all cylinders.
Oh, well, Jim, you're talking about marketing synergy and firing on all cylinders. One of the big stories has to be Wicked, because that happened out of the blue. I didn't know anything about Wicked going into the year, but boy, it was every single week we were talking Wicked this, Wicked that, Wicked this.
Yeah. And they just did not miss a trick. In fact, and again, in much the same way of keeping people interested and engaged with Epic Universe, how they did things like, for example, now, because the movie has been out for a couple of weeks, we can actually talk, for example, about the cameos that Adina Menzel
Yeah.
and Kristen Chenoweth made in that film. But just the notion that they made that call early on while they were developing this movie that we have to have the two women who originated these roles on Broadway show up in something of size in this film. So the fans will see them and know, oh my God, the originals are here in the movie. And it's not just a glorified cameo that they gave them something of size to do, but it's those sorts of smart choices all the way across the board that kept this film front and center. And we talked with your bride about, for example, on Christmas Day, the sing-along version of Wicked
Yep.
then opened in theaters. And speaking of which, have Lauren and Lainey gone out to sing along yet? Or
I don't listen. They've been singing along. They didn't need anybody to give them any instructions. They've been singing along. It like Spotify. Her Wrapped probably will be nothing but Wicked for the next year. So
Okay.
Jim, so how about this next story, which seems kind of crazy that, in my opinion, DreamWorks Land. Universal opened a whole new land, but it's kind of been overshadowed, right?
Well, yeah, but at the same time, if you look at that and remember, it wasn't all that long ago. I want to say it was 2014 that Comcast, NBC Universal actually bought DreamWorks. They paid $3.8 billion for the studio and the film library. And again, we've talked earlier in the show about the new head of the Universal Parks, Mark Woodbury, who of course came out of Universal Creative, and how Mark decidedly believes that between the classic Universal film library, between the new films that Illuminations is making, likewise the new films that DreamWorks is making, in addition to the other film titles that each of those animation studios have already made, it's like we don't need to go looking for other people's IP. We have great IP, and DreamWorks Land is kind of a demonstration of that. But at the same time, it is also it's classic Universal. We were just talking on the last show about how they had the Junior coaster, the Woody Woodpecker Nuthouse coaster, that has since become the Troller coaster that you were just mentioning on the show, that when you and the family visited, other than the one time you rope dropped the park and walked right onto that,
Right.
it was a 60-minute long wait for a 25-year-old coaster.
Right.
And
it's only a couple seconds long, but I mean, those kids want to do it. And it's the theming of DreamWorks Land was fantastic. It is made for the kids. So, where there might have been some, hey, this theme park isn't necessarily going to be, for toddlers and so forth, you could spend a decent amount of time. I mean, just in the Shrek area itself, your kid can get lost. So I think it was a nice addition to the theme park, and a pretty big feat to open that up. And you'll see that for years and years to come, with probably a lot of flexibility to add new DreamWorks characters in, especially that show in the back where it's kind of can be transformed, and you can probably bring different characters in as you make them.
I think you are correct.
Well, here, since we're talking about kids, I think we could briefly mention here that the Texas Universal Kids Hotel, the concept art has come out, and there's been a lot of talk over this year of the expansion of that. I think that is a pretty big story, not just in its own right, but having a branch, like a mini park, for kids, and or just kind of would you call it like a mini theme park? It's very interesting concept that, if it works, I think would be very great for us theme park fans to possibly get little pocket remotes throughout the country.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because there's a number of folks in the industry who are looking at what Universal has done here. And again, if you look at the IP that's associated with this park, you've got, for example, the obvious stuff. You've got Shrek, you've got Trolls, you've got but at the same time, you have things like Jurassic World, only you have Camp Cretaceous, the animated series that's aimed at kids. There's a number of folks who look at what they've done there in Texas, in between the smallish hotel and the tiny park and what appears to be land enough right next door to do a water park, that at full build out, this will be a place where a family can do a fun weekend. And more to the point, it's built basically in the middle of the country, so it will be a great gateway that, as your child goes to the Universal Kids Park and enjoys themselves, it's like, well, what do you want to do for your next family vacation? Well, maybe I want to go to Universal Orlando, or maybe I want to go to Universal Hollywood. Which, by the way, that's another story we have to talk about.
Right.
The permit, or I guess the site plan for the brand new hotel that's supposedly going to be built in Hollywood, right there in the parking lot, right by the entrance of their City Walk. So, yeah, I mean, again, this is a company that's definitely aggressively looking at the future and planning ahead.
Right. Well, they looking ahead, but they also one of my favorite stories, and this really got me in nostalgia, is the Universal Studios. They celebrated their 60th anniversary from the tram tour.
They did.
And there was nothing more that made me want to go to Hollywood than just seeing the tram tour and being like, oh man, I need to do this.
Well, and it's so interesting you say that, because I've been talking with my daughter Alice about these fan events that are being planned for 2025, and Alice is a huge One Piece fan. And so I'm just waiting for them to lock in the dates. So it's like, and then buy the tickets and then get myself a plane ticket out to California, and Alice and I doing, I guess it's an after hours event. So maybe we'll do a full day in the park. She hasn't yet to check out Super Nintendo World, and then we hang on and hang out with Luffy and the other members of the One Piece crew.
Yeah. No, I think they're doing some great stuff over Hollywood. They announced a whole bunch of those like type events. So I think that isn't going to stop in 2025.
No.
But just 5 or 6 hour drive from California, you can will be opening in 2025 is the Las Vegas Haunted House.
And I gotta say, this is the one I of anything they proposed, this is the one that concerns me the most. Just the notion of what is it? 4 mazes under one roof. And again, but different in that these are permanent mazes. These are not things that you build for 3 months and then you pull down and redo for California and Florida. And it's a big roll of the dice, because it's betting that there will be a year-round audience in Vegas for this sort of experience. I mean, face it, August through the first week of November, this will do land off its business,
right?
Because that's when Halloween is front of mind in America these days. But it's like, are there enough people who want to be scared from November to July? That's interesting to me.
Right. Well, I think like you mentioned before, this is a good corporate retreat and get some employees to get shaped up, right?
Yeah, well,
send them in there and say, you
think accounts payable is scary. Okay, go ahead in there.
That's it.
Oy,
no, but I think, if you look at those are some of the top stores for 2024, but if you look, they're super aggressive. They're making bold moves, Universal is, and if they pay off, I think they can really transform what we see in the coming years. Like, this Las Vegas and the Universal Kids, a whole nother theme park, different hotels, big franchise movies like, Wicked. I think this was a big pivotal year. 2024 was, and 2025 I think is going to be a landmark year for them.
It is such a fascinating time to be covering this company, and the fact that they're moving in so many different directions. But at the same time, as we mentioned on the show, it's a company that's doing interesting thing on television, like Inside Man,
right.
And certainly, I know that Universal had hoped that Wicked would be a big success, but nothing like what's happened. And again, it's going to be fascinating to see how they keep it front of mind. Because face it, Wicked for Good doesn't open till what, November 23rd of
Right.
next year? So 11 months. How do you keep that front of mind for 11 months? So.
Oh, well, it'll be interesting. I don't know. I mean, hopefully we don't get fatigue from it right now. I mean, I'm sure some people are already fatigued, but I remember back in the Frozen fever, there was Frozen fatigue in that aspect. I'm like, how can they balance that where you're still excited about it, but yet not super annoying, which will be interesting to see. But I'm sure they have, that's a good problem for them to have, right?
This is a good problem for them to have.
Right. Well, Jim, let me ask you this. I think those were some of the top stories. As most shows do when they do a recap of a thing, they like to do predictions.
Mhm.
You know, for predictions for 2025, this is I'll give you a couple that I have and give you an
Okay.
opportunity to see if there's any predictions that you have. I do think that there'll be record attendance in Orlando theme parks. And my justification is, we're 5 years since the pandemic. So if you think about it, a lot of people might have canceled or said, hey, we're not going to do trips during that, 2 or 3 period. Most people are taking big family vacations every 3 to 5 years. So I'm thinking a lot of people are saying, hey, 2025 is the year because Epic's there. We're going to go do our, Orlando. And then if you did travel, every 3 years, I think during the most families probably did like a post pandemic, maybe 2022, 23. And this is a good time for them to go back. So I think we'll have record setting attendance in Orlando. That is my basic prediction for 2025, which isn't super bold.
No.
But
I think you're genuinely on to something there. My only word of caution, though, is that there will be so many people who will be trying to get into Epic Universe that first summer for bragging rights
Right.
and also to it looks like an amazing park you want to experience. But here's the thing: there's that. And again, I apologize. I'm an old fart, folks. I've been covering the opening of theme parks. I want to say since '89, so 35 years. I am so old. But here's the thing: that first summer that any park is open, I mean, the creatives have handed it off to the ops team, and the ops team has to learn how the public actually wants to use that park. You never know how that park is going to work until you throw open the door for the first day, and then you watch what the guests actually want to go do and in what order they want to do it. And so, and we live in such a instantaneous reaction world where you open your phone and it's like, oh well, they don't like that. I think just understand it's their first summer, and it's going to take a while to get their arms around it and to make it work. And more to the point, when you think about just the design conceit of Epic Universe with the individual portals, which don't necessarily allow you to immediately transfer from one land to the other. I mean, you have to actually go in and out through the portal you came in. That could be a wonderful thing from a storytelling point of view, but kind of a pain in the ass from the ops way. So I'm just going to say, just have a little patience, a little understanding. And I also think this is why, again, I want to take Alice to go see this. And likewise, Nancy, I think we're going to wait till the fall.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
To let them figure out how it works, and then we'll go. So
is your prediction that there's what we're seeing now is probably not going to be the final product when we see at the end of 2025? There are going to be walkways from different lands.
Well, it is just the way it is with theme parks. I mean, there's the famous stories of when Walt opened Disneyland for the first time, and he was standing there in the park with Morgan Bill Evans, the gentleman who was in charge of horticulture and planning at the park, and he was watching people walk across, literally step over a fence and walk across a lawn to get to someplace. And Bill was expressing frustration that we just planted that grass. And he said, yeah, but they're telling us where the walkway needs to be. So call the cement guy, and let's lay down a sidewalk. So yeah, let's see how this park is 6 months in.
All right, and this is Jim. I'm going to make a bold prediction here. This is my prediction that you will get a press invite to the Epic Universal opening. That is my bold prediction, Jim.
I don't know about that. I mean, once upon a time when I worked for the Huffington Post, I got invited to everything. Now I work from my dining room table, and I'm very happy here. By the way, a lot of people don't get to work from home or tell fun stories like this sort of thing. And I'm not necessarily on the press list that I used to be, but at the same time, I'm a guy in his 60s. So it's like, I'm okay. If I don't get a press invite, that's fine. That's on the other hand, Mr. Testa, who actually lives in Celebration, is him. I might want to actually get a press invite too, because again, that's the thing. Touring plans, they need to be in there first. On the other hand, I can get in there late. I'm good. I'm good.
Well, Jim, you got any bold predictions? Anything that you want to predict for 25, or you're just going to let the year play out?
I think. And again, I say this is a 65-year-old man. I have learned the hard way that you make predictions and then real life happens. And it's like, I mean, just today, Len and I were recording a show about the Riviera Resort for Disney Dish. And the interesting thing is the Skyliner that serviced that hotel came online in September of 2019, and the hotel itself opened December of 2019. And then 3 months after that, the pandemic happened. And
Right.
and that's the thing. The hard reality is you can make a plan, and you can. And by the way, that was a brilliant plan to put the Skyliner servicing that hotel, because it's now the most popular DVC on property. And it's a beloved hotel because of the access and that sort of thing. But you just cannot see the things like a pandemic that potentially can blow up your lovely. I mean, that's what people need to understand is that there was a brilliant plan in place for an amazing Walt Disney World 50th anniversary that just got destroyed by the pandemic. And, so much of what was planned for that had been in the works for 10 years. They had their first meetings for what we're going to do for the 50th in 2011. And it's still, it got destroyed. So that's the thing. I always feel like people who make predictions, it's like, that's nice, but it's like I don't do that anymore. I've had enough of these things blow up in my face that I'm willing to sit back and see what actually happens. But at the same time, I have to tell you, I am still so much looking forward to getting into Epic Universe. I mean, my sweet spot is How to Train Your Dragon. I've loved those movies and very much looking to get to the island of Berk, but also really want to get into the Ministry of Magic. Every time they show more imagery in there, it's just sort of like, how is it possible you're building something that big inside of a theme park? I'm stunned.
And Jim, Dark Universe. That's all I got to say. Listen, what they're building right now is just a hodgepodge of 1A, 1B, 1C, like of attractions and things to be excited about. So, Jim, I am super thankful that we got to record. We started this last year, started this journey. We're 1 year into it. So it was a pleasure spending the 2024 picking your brain on this new obsession that I got, which is Universal Parks.
And to throw the compliments back your way, you have done such a nice job when it comes to the news portion of the show and chasing down what's going on behind the headlines and that sort of thing. I mean, I feel like it's grown into a genuinely fun show, and a lot of that is on your back. So thank you for all your hard work. And I've genuinely enjoyed doing the show with you in 2024 and look very much forward to doing even more shows in 2025.
You got it. Absolutely. Well, Jim, not only has it been a joy and pleasure working with you, but I have loved getting information and messages from everybody out there who's joined along and joined into the community. So if you want to continue that in 25, we love having your surveys, your questions, your pictures, story ideas. You can always send them to me at Eric Hersey on Instagram or X, but you can also send them to Jim.
Yep. And you can send them to me on X and Instagram at Jim Hill Media, and then over on Facebook at Jim Hill Media News. And well, I guess that's going to do it for this week's show, folks, which again is our first show for 2025. And again, I do want to acknowledge our brand new sponsor, Be Our Guest Vacations. So it's fun to have them on board as well. So thanks for listening, and stick around now to hear what's coming up later on this month on the Jim Hill Media Podcast Network. Thanks for listening to today's episode, and if you like what you heard, head on over to Apple Podcasts and give us a review. This really helps get the word out about our shows. We also have some other shows on the network that you might like. Each week, we drop a brand new Disney dish with Len Testa. For animation and movie news, please listen to Fine Tuning with Drew Taylor. By the way, you can also check out Drew's other podcasts, like The Fuse, the official Mission Impossible podcast, which he does with Charles Hood. For all things Lucasfilm, why don't you subscribe to Looking at Lucasfilm with Brian Gahn? Likewise, we have I Want That Too with the lovely Lauren Hersey, our weekly podcast that features the latest merch and the stories behind that merch. And our Epic Universal podcast takes a look at the Universal theme park. So please join Eric Hersey and I on that weekly. If you enjoy theme park history, we also host Manufacturing the Magic with Shelley and Noah Valladolid. That podcast tells the story of how we got the modern theme parks that we enjoy today. Join myself, Len Testa, and veteran Imagineer Jim Schul for our latest season of Disney Unpacked, our first ever video series exclusively for Patreon. These get released first Sunday of every month, and each month we release several exclusive podcasts to help support this video series. I want to thank everyone that supports the Jim Hill Media Network. For more information about podcasts and content, head on over to jimhillmedia.com. So that's going to do it for now, folks. Thanks again for listening, and we will catch up on the next show.